You've read already all these books and saw these AI-generated videos on Jung and individuation. But you're still puzzled how that could be applied to your own life and if all of that makes sense at all. You still feel the emptiness, the meaninglessness, but somehow you can't think your way out of it. The reason for that is very simple. That is not a mental or an intellectual problem that you want to solve. The parts of you that block you, they don't live in your thoughts. They live in your body, in your unconscious. And your body is already waiting for you to stop analyzing and to start listening. What I'm talking about is actually a well-documented phenomena in psychology. Insight without integration. That means we understand a lot of concepts intellectually, but we have problems to integrate them into our life. They try to solve a somatic problem, a problem that is related to your body, to your unconscious, to your feelings. They try to solve it by a thought process, and that doesn't work. So there's actually a gap between knowing and feeling. And this gap is not a sign that you did it wrong all the time. It is a sign that you've been trying to do it with your mind alone. Welcome back. This is Individuation Applied. Not theory, practical and tested real-life shadow work. My name is Ingo, and in this episode, I will show you how to finally start your individuation process using your body as an entry point. We live in an information society. We believe in science. And science is based on measurable, repeatable processes and outcomes. And these outcomes are all valid. But the scientific results can't explain everything. And especially in the field of psychology, where we have to do with individual human beings. We just can't explain our behaviors, our feelings, and our beliefs by a rational thought process alone. Because humans are often not rational. As a matter of fact, many psychological problems, like neurosis today, but also spiritual emptiness, they came up only when we changed from primitive intuitive men to a modern, civilized, and rational society. It might sound paradox, but somehow, the more we know, the more empty we get. The funny thing is, intellectually we know that already. There's something missing. Something doesn't feel complete. But we don't understand an important point. That the solution to our mental and emotional blocks is not by learning and knowing more and more and more. Our knowledge brought us here where we are today, but it can't bring us back to ourselves. That's the trap. The more you understand conceptually, the more you think you're making progress. There's this great analogy, right, of the map and the territory. By understanding the map, you won't know how to walk the territory. Just because you have a perfect image of a mountain, it doesn't mean you ever climbed it. And that's why all these books and videos about individuation and shadow integration, including actually this one, they can only bring you to a certain point. And from there you have to walk and to make the raw experience alone. Mental blocks and suppressed emotions, they often live somatically in our body. And that's why it's so difficult or even impossible to understand them. That's a fundamental problem on which our world is built on. I think, therefore I am. That was Descartes' claim. And by that he set the foundation for the modern and rational worldview, and everything that came after that. The point we're missing is that our rational mind, our thinking, is actually quite new to the human evolution. We started to become conscious only a few thousand years ago. Before that, we were ruled by our body and by our unconscious mind. The problem with Descartes' thought is that, at least this is our interpretation, that we reduce our existence to the thinking. So we're trying to talk away somehow these older animalic instincts and feelings that we have. The point is, we didn't truly replace them. We just stopped listening to them. But they're still sending signals. And this is our entry point. And this can also be explained scientifically. So if we take a simplified model of our brain, it has basically three parts. So there's the reptilian brain, which is responsible for our survival instincts and all these animalic desires that we had from ancient times. Then there's a mammalian brain, which is responsible for our emotions and social bonding. And then we have the neocortex, which is responsible for our reasoning and our thinking. In our modern life, unfortunately, we almost exclusively reward and develop the third layer, And we try to suppress or neglect or just to ignore the other two layers. Because they somehow don't fit into our technological world and they can also be hindering us. But I think the main reason is that we're afraid of what we can't explain. And this is true for all of us. I acted in this way for many years. In my early career, I tried to find logical justifications for every important decision I made. And what I did, I filled spreadsheets with advantages and disadvantages for the different options I had. And I analyzed everything thoroughly. And yet, sometimes my decisions, I didn't feel good with them. They felt somehow wrong, even that the paper said everything is good. But then over the years, I started to listen again and to integrate my intuition, the so-called gut feeling, right? That doesn't mean that I'm not analyzing my options anymore, that I don't have a conscious look on them. But for the final call, I am listening to what my body tells me. And usually, after that, I feel better with that. In the end, that's what individuation is all about, right? To integrate these forgotten parts and become whole. This is known also by all these Jung channels and organizations and coaches, but they stuck in the same issue. They understand and teach intellectually a practical concept. There's a line attributed to Jung that I really like, and it goes something like that. Learn all the concepts and learn the symbols and the ideas, but when you go and see your first patient, forget all of that. I think that's great advice, and you should keep this also in mind on your own individuation journey. You don't need more information or more systems to get started. You have already all you need in your body. Now, unfortunately, the body doesn't argue with you. It simply waits until you're ready to listen. Nietzsche understood this also very well. And that's actually also one of his main points of critique that he had towards Stoicism, especially to Plato, and even more to Christianity. Because their philosophies, they consider the body with all its animalic and profane desires and expressions as something unwanted, something that needs to be overcome. Nietzsche says quite the opposite. Here in this book, Thus Spake Zarathustra, it's here the German edition, so I will read from the screen the statement I want to make. Body am I, and soul. So says the child. And why should one not speak like children? But the awakened one, the knowing one saith, body am I entirely, and nothing more. And soul is only the name of something in the body. The body is a big reason, a plurality with one sense, a war and a peace, a flock and a shepherd. So what is Nietzsche saying here? He's not saying the body is smarter than the mind. He's saying the body is the primary intelligence. The thing that was there before, and the mind came only later. Now we should acknowledge one thing, that there are different parts of ourself, and we should give all of them the opportunity to speak. Because if we don't do that, or even worse, reverse the order, individuation, which is actually the process of becoming whole, it remains only partial, and thus it cannot be successful. So Nietzsche finally gave us back the body as the great reason. And Jung brought it into the psyche. And I appreciate his individuation process because it gives us a perfect map of our soul and a way to find our true self. Now we see already the problem, right? Because for most of our journey, we use only half the map. And we understand that we can see the correlation clearly. Most blocks we have today show up somewhere in the body. If we're thinking about childhood trauma or procrastination or a wrong career decision, sooner or later you will start to feel them. As headaches, as stomach problems, or in your chest. And if we don't take care of them in the right way, they can develop into serious diseases. In my opinion, the body is the best reflection of our shadow material. We just need to listen. But instead, we numb it with constant distraction and food and contents and drugs. Individuation is not only a mental practice. To be precise here, Jung himself worked primarily through dreams and active imagination and archetypes and symbols. The body was also present in his framework, but mostly as a signal system, not as an entry point. That's also understandable for the time he lived in. For his time, his approach was already radical enough, and it was a big step forward by integrating as a first step the unconscious. But in the last decades, we also got a lot of research in somatic trauma work. Levine, van der Kolk, what they all point to is almost the same thing, that you cannot think your way through material that was not stored in your brain. That's why I use Jung's map, but I add the body as the actual starting point. Not because Jung was wrong, but because without it, the process tends to stay in the head, and the shadow remains a concept. And so, nothing moves. Once you start to include the body, the unconscious stops needing to shout through symptoms and starts speaking through clear feelings and intuition. So what does that actually look like? What do you do with this information now? Well, the problem we have today is that we live in a world that focuses completely on our head. We are constantly surrounded by distractions that make it easy or even encourage not to listen to our body. The challenge now, but it's actually also the most direct way to individuation, is to actively create situations where your body and your mind can reach a state of silence in which they have the opportunity to communicate freely between them. So let me share with you my experience. The clearest shift I've experienced didn't come from books or coaching sessions or meditations. I regularly achieved this state in periods of extended fasting. Right now I'm actually on day 5 of a 12-day fast, so I can explain you exactly what happens. So why I'm doing that? It's usually food is one of my main ways to distract myself or to tell my body to shut up. And right now in this fast, I don't have this option. I just stopped eating. My stomach is not getting any input anymore, so it shuts down digestion. And it has obviously also health benefits, but I do it for something way more important. By shutting down my digestive system, I also release energy. And this energy and this calmness and this space I'm creating is available for something new. I give my body the opportunity to speak without disturbing it all the time. And I'm honest with you, the feeling I have right now is not purely pleasant. Actually, I feel two different things. On the one hand, there is this emptiness in my stomach, in my belly, and that feels a little bit strange, but it's not really a bad kind of emptiness. It feels, I would say, honest. But the other thing I feel is this highly increased mental energy and this clarity, and also the fact that all my senses, I feel much better. I get much more inputs. I'm not really getting more of them. I think I get them all the time, but I listen more to them. I have the opportunity to listen more to them. And in this different environment, also my shadow can speak up much more freely. I notice this mainly in my dreams. They are much more clear and detailed and vivid during this phase. So I truly believe that fasting is a threshold practice that lets the body do what the head tried and failed to do alone. To release what no longer belongs and to make room for what does. Now, a quick disclaimer here. I don't recommend everyone to do a 12-day fast. I think you definitely should start that slowly and also consult your doctor or health expert before you get started. And ideally, you should be supervised by someone who understands the process. But fasting is not the only option. Another way to open the dialogue with the unconscious is by spending time in nature combined with physical activity. This also helps to remove your mental chatter through embodied challenge and solitude. That supports individuation by allowing suppressed feelings and your lost intuition to return. And it comes much more natural than through forced introspection. That's actually my way of active meditation. I feel that always on my long runs or hikes or bike rides. But also here now, you don't have to disappear in the mountains for weeks. But you have to get your body into a situation where it finds trust in itself. And that can't be achieved in the office or in the gym or in front of a screen. But now let's get practical. How can you actually start this process? My suggestion is very simple. Just pick one practice and do it regularly. Just to give your body a moment where it doesn't have to compete with your head. I brought you 3 exercises. Take one of them, the one that resonates most with you, and make it a habit. The first one is actually fasting, but I'm not talking now about 12 days, just a 24-hour fast or even intermediate fasting can work. Like if you have a tight eating window, let's say 6 or 8 hours a day where you're eating, and the rest of the day you fast, that is a way to create this space. But don't do it for the health benefits or because you can lose 2 kilos or whatever. Do it with intention and notice what comes up when food is no longer in the way. If you want to learn more how powerful this is, I linked the video about my 12-day fast and what it does for me in the description, so check it out next. The second exercise you can do is a sit session in nature. Take yourself 20-30 minutes, no phone, no destination, and let your body report what it feels, instead of waiting for your mind to interpret it first. The third exercise that I think is great is a short body scan or a movement practice in the morning. Just focus on different parts of your body and combine this with one honest question. What is my body carrying that my mind keeps explaining away? You see, these are not complicated things. They're actually very simple. But the point is, you should do them, at least one of them, frequently. Only by that you can see a progress. And even that they're simple, they are uncomfortable enough to be real. So I hope I made this clear in this video. The first step is not something dramatic. And you also don't need a PhD for that. It is simply the decision to stop leaving your body out of the conversation. And everything after that is the natural unfolding of individuation. As a life experience, not just as understanding. If this resonates with you, follow my current fasting series where I document real shadow work in practice, in my own daily life, and subscribe to the Small Reset to learn more in this Applied Individuation series. Free your body and your mind will follow, because the mind was never leading in the first place.